Hey, great to be with you this morning. This is one of these churches where I know a lot of people. I'm kind of born and bred Fellowship Baptist, pastored two churches in the fellowship, and over the years you get to know many people. So first of all, Kyle, it's great to see you again, brother. He's back from his sabbatical. How come nobody said this yet? Kyle is back, people. This is great. He is so rested, he is ready to just take on everything now. No, I shouldn't have said that. He's going to have to work his way back in, but you need to know this. I would have said this if Kyle wasn't here, but you have one of our best pastors pastoring this church. So, Kyle, we love you, brother, and church family. I'm grateful to hear that you gave him a sabbatical, and I hope you treat him well to have him as your pastor. It's also fun for me because I also just know lots of people over, 20, 30 years. Here, friends, people I work with, all kinds of stuff. So like the McDonald's, the Lanigans, the MacAlisters, the Chapmans. So the list goes on and on. So it's really fun to be able to come to this church this Sunday and be able to share God's word with you. Let me just say three quick things about Northwest, and then we'll come to the message. First of all, you saw in the video our kind of model of education. So if you don't know, you heard this earlier, we are your school. We are the school that trains pastors and Christian leaders for the fellowship, and this church is one of the churches. Is the school. So that's where is my sound doing all right? I feel like it's cutting in and out. To the side or the back? Very good. There we go. Now you can do, is that better? Just shout at me if we need to do it again. Something else. Where was I? If you are someone who is saying, you know what, I'm interested in maybe serving the Lord in some sort of Christian leadership capacity, maybe even want to become a pastor, not necessarily, but serving in a ministry, that's what we're here for. And particularly our master's degrees are designed for you. And so you want to talk to Kyle, for instance, that would be the kind of thing where you'd say, I want to serve in this church, I want to be trained, I want to have a mentor, I want to work with Northwest. If that's you and God, you feel like God is kind of tugging at you a little bit, you'd want to talk to Kyle or you want to talk to myself, and we can see where God might take you on your journey. Now, secondly, if those of you here are maybe in high school, maybe you're just graduated high school and you're trying to figure out what should I do with the next few years of my life, here's something brand new that we have at Northwest. I didn't even have a video for it yet. That's how new that it is, but I want to make sure that you know about it. We've just opened an undergrad program. So a bachelor's degree begins, first of all, with a one-year certificate. Then you can go on if you want and do a 2-year diploma, or you can do a full bachelor's degree. It's the same model that you saw up here on the screen. You would, for instance, if you're saying, I'm sticking around Abbotsford for the next year, you don't necessarily want to become a pastor or work in a ministry, but you just want to take 1 year of your life and say, I want to grow in my faith. I'd like to grow in some skills. I'd like to serve Jesus. I don't really know how to do that. That's what this is designed for. So again, you would be given 3 mentors. You would take our courses mostly online. You would work here in the church, assuming Kyle and company could figure all that out for you. And you would have that kind of first year to be able to serve the Lord and grow in your faith. And then you could quit after that year and you could go off to UBC or do whatever you want, or you could continue on. So if you're in high school or if you're just graduated, that's a brand new thing for you. Again, you can come talk to me afterwards. We'd love to give you more information on that. It's so new that I really don't even have promotional materials yet. And then third and finally, maybe you're here today and you just say, I'd like to be able to invest in scholarships for students. You know, education is expensive. We keep ours way down. We are one of the cheapest schools because we deeply value people not graduating with big debt because they're usually going into some sort of form of ministry, and ministry doesn't pay $500,000 a year. So, I mean, maybe that this church you do, I don't know. But typically, it's not the way that it goes. So we want to make sure that debt is way down, and the way we do that is we scholarship students, and that happens by people giving towards scholarships. So if that interests you and you say, I'd like to be able to invest in that, you can come speak with me afterwards, and we can figure something out there. So that's just a little bit about Northwest. Feel free to speak with me after the service, and we can answer any questions that you might have. All right, let's come to the Word. Kyle invited me to be joining into your Proverbs series, and he wants me to talk on laziness and hard work. Who's excited? I mean, what better topic than laziness and hard work? All right, so that's my task, that's my assignment. But I'm sure someone's already said this to you, but the book of Proverbs is such an important book in the Bible because here's the book where God teaches us what it means to be wise. And to be wise means that you are able to navigate the complexities of this world and this life. Because let's be honest, life is very complex. Life is very difficult. There's not always a black and white answer. There's not always a Bible verse for every single situation that you face. But Proverbs teaches us how to be wise. And to be wise means you can navigate the many complex situations and relationships of life in a way that honors God and that makes your life better. On the flip side, to be foolish means you don't know how to navigate life, you don't handle things well, you don't make good decisions, and you make your own life fall apart, and you cause lots of problems for other people. So there are very few more practical books in the Bible than the book of Proverbs, because I think we all want to become wise. We want our lives to go well. We want to honor the Lord, and so this book is specifically designed by God for that purpose. And as I just mentioned, actually one of the most common themes in the book of Proverbs is this whole subject of work, and on the flip side, laziness. In fact, it's one of the most dominant subjects within the book. So we're talking kind of about laziness, and your translation we're going to use today uses the word sluggard. That's just a good word. Just means a lazy person. Or here's even a better old word, slothfulness. Just say that. That's just a good word to say, slothfulness. Doesn't that just feel good saying that word? So when I think of that word, though, I always think of Sid the Sloth. Anyone remember Sid the Sloth, the Pixar Ice Age movies? What a great series. What a great franchise that was. If you haven't seen it, Sid is the comic relief, and you can tell by the image, that's exactly what he is. He is lazy, and he is foolish. He is the opposite of the book of Proverbs. He makes endless mistakes, and as a result of his foolishness, he brings trouble into his own life and a whole lot of trouble into everybody else's lives as well. So he's kind of the poster child for what Proverbs is saying is the opposite of a hardworking person who is wise. He is the fool, so to speak. Now, of course, all that's pretty funny in an animated movie, but Proverbs says that we actually all, probably most likely, have an inner sloth within us. Now, you might say, I don't think I do. Well, just wait. Let's see what Proverbs does for us. It's that part of our lives that maybe neglects our responsibilities because we scroll too much social media, we relax a little too much. Maybe we're not totally lazy, but there's some responsibilities that are not being taken care of. Another thing, as animals, sloths, they just like to take it easy. That's literally what a sloth is. They don't engage in much activity, and if you've ever seen a sloth move, it's kind of like, super slow, just moving along very, very slowly as they move. Here's the other thing about sloths. They're good at hiding. You ever been to the Vancouver Aquarium? We used to have season passes for my kids, and we'd take the kids in there, and there's this one room in the aquarium. It's the tropical room, and in the tropical room, it's a pretty big room. There's trees. It's kind of like a jungle in there, and it's really hot in this part of the aquarium. And so you go in there, and there's a sloth somewhere in that giant room. And so my kids would always go in, and they're immediately looking for the sloth. And so then they point up at something, and look. And I'd say, no, that's not the sloth. That's just a branch. That's just a tree. And it's pretty dense, right? So they're looking around over there. Nope, that's not the sloth either. So they keep looking, and eventually they get it right. And we'd say, there's the sloth. There it is. And then you see it curled up in some corner sleeping because it never moves. It seems to do anything. This is what Proverbs is also saying. We all have an inner sloth. But here's the thing, it hides. There are ways we're going to see that we justify having the sloth in our life. But that sloth can cause great damage to ourselves, and it can cause great damage to other people. No one wants to admit that a sloth lives in their hearts. But today I think Proverbs is going to do some work on us to show us where there might be a sloth in our life that is causing troubles in the way that we live. And so what we want to do this morning is listen to the book of Proverbs, because it's going to show us how to honor God in the way that we live our lives to do with work, rest, and laziness. And then it's going to show us how our lives can improve and how we can avoid wrecking our lives. What an important subject. And listen, if you're young here today, and I mean young as in you're a teenager, you're a young adult, or let's just say under 35, that's who Proverbs is first written for. It's for everybody, but Proverbs is specifically written for those who are young. Because we need to learn when we are young how to make wise and good decisions that honor God. Because if we don't, we end up bringing so much trouble into our own lives and so much destruction into other people's lives. So if you're young, particularly pay attention. Because if you gain wisdom on this particular topic when you're young, it'll save you a lifetime of harm. It'll bring a lifetime of good to you. But really, Proverbs is for everyone. So that's the topic this morning. That's kind of the plan. We're going to, first of all, talk about things that are not sloths in our lives, because we got to be careful to say what is not slothfulness. Then we're going to look at what is slothfulness. What does that look like? We'll dig into Proverbs, and then we'll talk about how to kick the sloth out of our lives. Okay, that's the plan. Does that sound like a plan to you? Yeah, okay, you're with me? All right, this is good. This is good. I know it's the long weekend. It's a little warm out. Let's get to it then. So part one of the message, I want to do this. I want to point to a few things, and like with my kids, I want to say, that's not a sloth. That's not a sloth. So we're going to rip through this pretty quick, but I think it's really important that we begin this by talking about what is not slothfulness, because some of us can really accuse ourselves falsely that we're lazy, or other people may. Many of you maybe have had parents who, when you were younger, they accused you, or other people accused you of being lazy, when actually you're not lazy. These people impose things upon you. So we got to be very careful to handle Proverbs well, to say, no, that's not what we're talking about, and then we will talk about what we are talking about as we dig into the book of Proverbs, all right? So there's author Jared Wilson. He gives a good list of, I think, what we might wrongly identify as laziness or slothfulness, and I'm going to add a few of my own to this list as well. First, stillness is not slothfulness. Stillness is not slothfulness. Jesus intentionally took time away from his work, intentionally went off by himself to be still, to rest before God, and to worship God. We must follow Jesus, who the scriptures literally say is wisdom. Jesus is the personification of wisdom. So if we are wise, we will also find places to be still, to rest, and to worship. So it is not wrong to lie down on the couch and relax when you've done a hard day's work and you've taken care of your responsibilities. It's not wrong to get away for quiet times with the Lord and to rest. That's what Jesus did. That's what we're called to do. Second, Sabbath is not slothfulness. Listen carefully to this, working 7 days a week is not a sign of wisdom. God has designed us as human beings for a 6+1 rhythm. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. When we go against that, Proverbs actually says, you are going against the fabric of the universe. You are going against the way that you are made. In our culture, we sometimes glorify workaholism. This will be a separate sermon, but workaholism is foolishness. And the older you get, the more you will begin to learn that's the case. When you get to be even just around my age, I can't tell you how many people I've seen who have ruined their mental health, ruined their physical health, ruined their marriages, and ruined their relationship with their kids because they're workaholics. They're never around. You don't see them, and they've driven themselves into the ground. You see it over time. That is not wisdom. That is foolishness to be a workaholic. We're going to talk about the importance of work, but right now we need to say workaholism is not wisdom. Sabbath has an important place for us where we're resting, we're enjoying the world God has given us, and we're worshiping him. Third, recreation is not slothfulness. As part of God's command to rest, we are also called and invited to enjoy the good gifts that God has given us in this world, like hobbies, going for hikes, watching sports, painting, just enjoying a good meal. I mean, read Ecclesiastes. Basically, Ecclesiastes is, your life is short, you're going to die, how should you live today? Enjoy a meal. Because God has given you food. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your family. The biblical call is to enjoy the good gifts. So recreation, it could be slothfulness, but recreation is a good gift of God. As long as we are fulfilling our responsibilities in life, it is a good gift to be enjoyed. Fourth, retirement from a job is not slothfulness. Not necessarily, anyways. It could be. I mean, if you had all your health at whatever age you retire, and then you just sat on a couch for 20 years, that could be slothfulness. But typically when people retire at around 65 or something like that, they typically don't have the same health or the same energy that they once had. But then you often see these people are retired, and they're some of the greatest volunteers. They do it within the health and the energy that they have. But that's not slothfulness. We should not be causing ourselves guilt or others when, as we age, and we retire from working a full-time job. That's not laziness. That's called aging. And it's called God is now winding things down. And now there's a time for rest as well in your life. And then finally, just to clear up this whole part, inability to work is not slothfulness. Inability to work. There's a world of a difference between somebody who wants to work but cannot for whatever reason, and somebody who just says they can work but they don't want to. That's a totally different thing. So that's me pointing to those, how many was there? 5 areas where maybe we've got some self-guilt going on. Maybe we accuse ourselves, or maybe others have put burdens upon us and accused us. And God would say through His Word, I don't want you to have that. I want you to be free. I don't want you to have unnecessary guilt around these particular areas. So we need to look at all those areas and say, like my kids, that's not a sloth. That's not slothfulness. Those are things that need to be worked on. So I needed to clear the decks because I think that's really important before we talk about this subject and make sure we covered what this is not about today. So now let's turn to part 2. Here we'll dig into Proverbs. And Proverbs is going to point us to numerous things in our lives, and it's going to say, there's the sloth. There it is. Okay, we said where it's not. Now we're going to see there it is. So let's begin at the most basic level. I think in one sense we all understand that laziness is not doing something. But we've got to be a little more clear than that. We've got to be a little more precise in our definition. Laziness or slothfulness is not doing something when you should be doing something. Because it's okay to not do something. That's what we just said earlier, right? But there's a time when you have responsibilities, you should be doing them, and if those aren't being done, that's what we're talking about now. Within that category, God has given us all certain responsibilities in life. And if we don't do those things, that is where we can wreck our own lives, we can cause frustration to others, and we can wreck our relationships, lose our jobs, all those kind of things. That's the topic that we're on here. So, how can you tell if there is an inner sloth in your life? Let me give you a bunch of ways as we dig into Proverbs about how to identify if and where there is a sloth in your life. Here's the first one. First, sloths don't take responsibility. Sloths don't take responsibility. This is the easiest one, I think, to spot. So let's look at Proverbs chapter 24, verses 30 to 34. Here's what it says. I passed by the field of a sluggard. There it is, that word again, right? A slothful person, a lazy person. By the vineyard of a man lacking sense. Okay, we're walking by this vineyard. What's happening? And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. Here's the reflection upon walking by this man's vineyard. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. So those verses are teaching us, here's this image of a man who owns a vineyard, but he's neglecting it. The stone wall that surrounds the vineyard, that would protect the vineyard, this stone wall has collapsed over time and has not been repaired. Not only that, the vineyard is filled with thorns. Thorns have taken over the vineyard. In the Bible, thorns should make you think of something. It should take you back to Genesis chapters 1 to 3, where God creates the world, He creates human beings, and note this, before the fall, God called human beings to work. Work is actually part of our makeup as human beings, but apparently, way back then, work was not as difficult or frustrating. It was enjoyable. You know that feeling that you get when you feel like, I accomplished something? I feel productive. There's that sense of satisfaction. That's what work only was. Then as you read Genesis chapter 3, and the fall, the human beings fall into sin, then God curses the ground. And the ground will now produce food still, but it's going to come with thorns and thistles. In other words, work is going to be difficult. You're going to have to sweat. It's going to be frustrating. You're always going to be battling and battling. And this is that side of work that we all know too well, where you're working and working, you feel like you're banging your head against a wall. Things aren't working, and all of a sudden you tried this, and this came in and sideswiped it. And it's just so frustrating at times. Work is so, we sweat and we're exhausted from what we do, and it's not that feeling of satisfaction. It's that frustration feeling that we have. That's what Genesis 3 says is the curse that has happened because of human sin. So back to Proverbs then, thorns are this image of the curse. And the image here is that poverty is always creeping up towards you, like thorns seeking to grow up through the ground. And if you aren't careful in your life, the thorns will begin to take over the vineyard. You won't even notice it for a while, but if you're not out there weeding, if you're not doing the work, if you're being lazy, the thorns will take over your life. If you're lazy for just a short time, if you relax just a little too much, thorns will overtake the vineyard of your life. So the application here is very simple. If you're lazy, you'll ruin your life. Am I okay with that? Good? All right, don't know what's happening. Good? It's things like, just too much goofing off in high school. You don't get your education more. You don't get a career. Too much goofing off as a young adult, having too much recreation. You don't get opportunities, or you don't pay your bills on time. All these things eventually cause the thorns to grow up in the vineyard of your life. If it's not cared for, if it's not tended, if the wall is not repaired when it breaks down, eventually the vineyard of your life begins to fall apart. So at a most basic level, becoming wise simply means taking responsibility for your life. Get a job, work hard, manage your money, pay your bills, take care of the problems. That's where Proverbs begins at its most basic level, is just saying, take responsibility for yourself. Now, here's the question. I'm going to ask you to have some maybe soul-piercing application questions as we go along. Here's the first one. Ask yourself, am I facing problems because I have neglected important responsibilities in my life? Am I facing problems because the reason would be I've neglected certain responsibilities and now I'm paying a price? If so, there's the sloth. That needs to be addressed at a most basic level if the problems are a lack of taking responsibility for areas you are responsible for. Proverbs is saying, be wise. Don't let your life fall apart. Don't cause problems for other people. Honor the Lord. Take responsibility at its most basic level. Yet I think at this point, many people are saying, okay, that's not me at all. I'm not a lazy person. I work really hard. That's great. Wonderful. If this first point doesn't apply to you, no problems at all. But Proverbs warns that slothfulness comes in many forms. And as we said with my kids out in the tropical area of the Vancouver Aquarium, the big thing about slothfulness is it hides itself. It hides itself in our hearts, and that we easily justify and overlook it. So listen to this verse in Proverbs 26:16. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Now here's a lazy man, and he thinks he can so justify everything that he's doing. There's no sloth in my life. What are you talking about? There's a reason for that. There's an excuse for that. 7 people can try to bring sense to this person, but he's like, no, I don't see a sloth. There's no sloth here. In other words, this should get all of us right now. All of us should be saying, oh, okay, I think I do work hard, but I wonder, maybe there are some areas where a sloth has crept into my life. And that's why Proverbs wants to point out numerous other ways that we can have a sloth in our life. It wants to point to these things and say, there's a sloth. We need to get that out of your life so that you can be wise, you can honor the Lord, and your life can go well. So here's the second sign that there might be a sloth in your life. Secondly, sloths fail to start what needs to be done. Sloths fail to start what needs to be done. Look with me at Proverbs chapter 6, verses 9 to 11. Here's a person talking to someone who's lazy, and this is what the person is saying. How long? How long are you going to lie there, oh sluggard, lazy person? How long are you just going to lay there? When will you arise from your sleep? And then that same phrase we read a little earlier. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. So notice that the one asking the questions to the lazy person is very frustrated. They're very annoyed with the lazy person, and the same questions keep getting asked. How long? How long are you going to keep relaxing until you finally get to the task that you need to do that's clearly affecting my life as well? You're affecting everybody else around you. How long until you're going to get to that? When? When will you actually start doing what needs to be done? And the implied response from the sluggard, the slothful person is, stop nagging me. I'm busy right now. Stop nagging me. But here's the question then. We may indeed be busy, but here's the piercing question for all of us. Are we busy in the right things? Laziness shows itself when we prioritize what we want to do over what we need to do. Is anybody an employer in here? Have you ever seen this? Wow, this is a big one. Everybody will prioritize what they want to do. But the question is, are you prioritizing what you need to do? As an employee, at the home, we all can do the things we want, but are we taking on the responsibilities that we need to do? So here's the next piercing question. Do other people get frustrated because I don't prioritize my life enough to start doing what I should be doing? So remember, this verse is somebody else who's super frustrated with the lazy person. So the question we got to ask is, do other people get frustrated because I don't prioritize my life enough to start doing what I should be doing? Not what I want to be doing, what I should be doing. If so, there's the sloth. What's the correction for it? Proverbs says, go for a walk out into the forest, find an anthill, and look at the ants. This is what Proverbs says. Listen to these. Go to the ant. Go look at an ant. Oh, lazy person. Consider her ways and be wise, so you can gain wisdom by looking how an ant lives. What does an ant do? Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. In other words, ants are self-motivated. They don't need others to tell them to start working. In summertime, they gather what needs to be gathered. They work hard. It's about needs. It's not about wants. They take responsibility, and they get done what needs to get done. So, those are the first two things, and I think these are the big obvious ones. These are like, okay, we can see that. Do I take responsibility for the key things in my life? And do I start the things that need to be done? And you can look at those and you can just say, okay, yes, I got those covered. But again, remember, a sloth can hide itself. And so Proverbs keeps like going deeper and deeper into our hearts. Or we could say, looking further into the foliage in the Vancouver Aquarium to say, oh, way in the back corner, there it is. It's hidden. It's way, the sloth is way back there. And so Proverbs just keeps going and calls us to consider whether there is a sloth in our life. So, slothfulness is not taking responsibility. Secondly, it's not starting what needs to be done. And then Proverbs also says in the third place, sloths fail to finish what they start. Sloths fail to finish what they start. Now, we'll lighten this up just a little bit. I know this is all heavy stuff because, man, it hits us, right? But Proverbs uses a lot of humor and sarcasm, actually, biting sarcasm to try and make us see how important this topic is. So now we're going to see some of the humor come out, all right? Listen to Proverbs 19:24. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. What's that saying? You got to imagine here, here's a person who has fulfilled the first two things we talk about, takes responsibility in order to go out and get a job, in order to make money, to go to the grocery store, to be able to buy all the food, and now has got all the food, done all the prep, the food's sitting on the table, but now in the end, oh, it's just so much work to put my fork down to take it up to my mouth. That's way too hard to do. So it's a really humorous and really stupid thing because nobody does that, right? But it's saying this is what a foolish person is like. That's what a lazy person is like. You might take responsibility, you might start things, but you don't finish it. And that would just be ridiculous to start something but not finish it. It's like making all your food and then you just put your hand down in the dish because you're too lazy to take it up to your mouth. Proverbs 12:27, exact same analogy, just a little bit different. Whoever is slothful will not roast his game, but the diligent man will get precious wealth. So again, here's what it's saying is people who start things but don't finish them. They're like a hunter who spends like a day or two out looking for game, finally kills the deer, brings the deer back to the house, does all this necessarily in order to prep it, the meat. Like it's like you go to the grocery store, you've done all this work, you got the job, the steak is sitting on the counter, and you're like, I don't feel like putting it on the barbecue tonight. That's just too much work. And so the steak just sits on the counter and rots. You're like, you had a job, you went to the store, you did all this, and now the steak's just going to sit on the counter all night? That is what Proverbs is saying, is a person who just basically sits there and doesn't finish the tasks that they're supposed to start. So the two images are ridiculous, but they're calling us to look at ourselves and to say, what is happening with us that we might start something and not finish it? So here's the next piercing question we got to ask ourselves. Is my reputation that of a person who can't be counted on to finish a task. You might take responsibility for your life. You might start tasks, but here's the next question. Is my reputation that of a person who can't be counted on to finish the task? Can you hold down a job? In your job, can you be trusted to complete the tasks that are given you? And again, we can see what an important subject this is to be wise in our world, because I think we all know people get really frustrated. You get frustrated with others, and people will get frustrated with you if you start things and never finish them. Whether it's at home or whether it's at work, whether it's at the church in the way that you serve, if you can't be counted on to finish a task, you're going to cause frustration. You're going to wreck your own life, your own reputation. You'll wreck others, and it's not honoring to the Lord. So Proverbs is saying to be wise means you can navigate all the complexities of life in a way that honors God, in a way that causes your life to go better, and same with other people. You're loving other people, and one of the key ways to do that is you're a person who can be counted on to finish what you start. Proverbs keeps going. I'm telling you, Proverbs, this is a huge topic in Proverbs. Let's get the next one. This is a fun one. Fourth, sloths make lame excuses. Sloths make lame excuses. This is one of my favorite verses. You're going to think that this is just, again, this is the utter sarcasm to make a point. That's what this is. Proverbs 26:13. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. There's a lion in the street. Here's what that means. Let me translate it to life here at Immanuel. Sorry, I can't come help out, Kyle, with that church work project day because there might be, I think there's a grizzly bear going down McClure. So I'm not showing up. That's just too dangerous for me. I mean, is it possible there's a grizzly bear going down McClure? Sure, it could come down from Mission. Grizzly bears can swim. They could swim across the Fraser. Somehow could have walked all the way up here. Is it possible? Of course it is. But it's such a ridiculous thing. Like, you're not going to come to this church work project because there might be a grizzly bear? Are you kidding me right now? A totally lame excuse. That's the point here. It's beyond stupid. It's like, you got to get your head in the game here because that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Now, just think of all the lame excuses that people make for not doing what they're supposed to do. Oh, wow. Instagram Reels and TikTok are filled with them. I mean, just from employer perspectives. Wait, someone says, an employee says, I didn't come into work today. I didn't tell you because my phone died, so I couldn't let you know that. Really? There wasn't another way you could have figured out to call in and let your employer know that you couldn't come? Your just phone died? You didn't think you should do something else? Or you're in trouble with the CRA? Why? I didn't think I didn't submit my taxes on time. Well, you didn't know that April 30th was the date. You didn't take responsibility to submit your taxes. Now you're paying the price for it. Like, you can't tell the CRA, hey, I just needed an extra month's grace. Like, good luck with that. We could go on for a long, long time here, right? Just lame excuses for not taking basic responsibility for the things that we're called to do. And again, let's be clear on this. The whole reason God has given us this book of Proverbs is because He wants us to live the way He's designed us. He wants our lives to go well. He wants us to live and to honor Him, to love others. He doesn't want your life to be ruined. So when it hits hard for us, we got to hear, this is God saying to us, I want your life to go well. I remember watching a talk show where a group of people, I mean, this must have been bad. They took a woman on a talk show to confront her about how she was just compulsively late, so much so it was just wrecking all her relationships, and she would just always make really lame excuses about why she's just late for absolutely everything. It's got to be pretty bad if people are taking you on a talk show to do that, right? And so they're confronting her, they're talking to her, she's just justifying herself the whole time about, well, this happens, and I think we all know this, that we will all listen, we will all give grace to people for a certain amount of excuses. We understand life doesn't always work. Everyone will give grace. But we also all know that when someone makes excuses compulsively and constantly, we eventually they lose our trust, and we become frustrated. Here's the thing, though. We're Canadians, so we don't usually say it to their face. But we all feel it inside. We're just like, you shake your head about that person. The problem is the person doesn't really know that. And so we got to look at ourselves. So on this talk show, it was pretty brutal. The host finally interrupted and just said to this woman, do you know what your problem is? He said, you're arrogant. And everyone's like, whoa, that's a pretty harsh thing to say. And the talk show host said, you think everyone else's schedules should revolve around yours. Wow, talk about just dropping the hammer. See, on something like this, there's no Bible verse There's no just black and white answer, but remember, wisdom, according to the book of Proverbs, is there doesn't have to be a Bible verse for something, but you have grown in wisdom. And wisdom is you see the complexities of life, you understand how relationships work, you understand the culture you live in, and a wise person knows how to navigate all of the complexities, all the pitfalls, all the rocks that comes up in a way that honors God, blesses other people, and makes your life go well. That is what we want. And that is what it means to grow in wisdom. So here is the piercing question for you. You ready for this one? Do I make a lot of excuses in my life? Are you the kind of person who makes a lot of excuses? Now, again, let me be careful to say this. There are many legitimate excuses. I mean, we live in a fallen world. Things do not work the way we want to. We make plans, and our plans fall apart for many, many reasons. So we're not talking here about legitimate excuses that happen once in a while. We're talking about, is your whole life filled with excuses? If your life is filled with all kinds of excuses, it's worth looking at yourself or asking other people, do you think I'm a person who can be counted on? Do you think I'm a person who's trustworthy? Ask some other people, and you might find out some answers. So a wise person looks at themselves and says, am I the kind of person who can be counted on, or am I the type of person who's always making excuses and can't be counted on? If you are, Proverbs, I told you, it's digging in on us, says, there's the sloth. You need to get that sloth out of your life. A couple more really quickly, and then we'll talk about how to kick out the sloth. Fifth, and very quickly, sloths procrastinate. Look at Proverbs 14:23. In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. So here's a person who talks about work, discusses the project, but takes so long to actually doing it that it's too late to get to it once it's there. Again, we all know that procrastination can ruin. We all procrastinate, let's be honest. There are levels, but then if procrastination takes over your life, it can cause a lot of grief to you and to other people. So here's the question. Is procrastination a mark of my life? We all procrastinate, let's be honest. But is it a mark, a defining mark? You know that then that's not the life of wisdom. It's the life that could cause a lot of troubles for yourself and for others. There's the sloth. And now here's the last one. Sloths relax too much. They relax too much. Again, Proverbs uses sarcastic humor, kind of like it, it's kind of fun, to try and wake us up to this problem. Listen to Proverbs 26:14. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. So here's the picture. A lazy person, imagine a person is so lazy they're literally attached to their bed like a door is attached to its hinges. And the only time that the lazy person moves is to roll over like a door is opened and closed. I mean, it's so extreme again, right? It's just this picture of you are so lazy, the only time you move is to roll over in your bed. So again, it's an extreme example. It's hyperbole to drive home the point to us that this is the relaxation has taken over your life. You're not taking responsibility for things. This is a major problem in the workplace. People get sidetracked by all kinds of diversions. Like one TV show I once watched where the character on the show said, in an average week, I'd say I only do about 20 minutes of real actual work. Why? Because, well, let's be honest, nowadays it usually has to do with too much social media, playing games on phones, calling in sick when people aren't. Do you remember way back when Angry Birds came out, the game on your phone? I mean, that's getting a little bit old now. But it's such a huge thing, it just took over everyone's life, mine too, not while I was working, but it took over everyone's life. Super fun game. But there was an article that was ran, and they estimated that Angry Birds cost the economy $1.5 billion in lost wages because people were just not working. I mean, it was a pretty addictive game, let's be honest. Someone in this article wrote, at least 15 people I work with are playing Angry Birds continuously while they talk to customers 7 hours a day. So that's the kind of thing we're working, in the workforce now, that is the kind of stuff that we're trying to figure out. How do we do this? So if you are young, this is where you need to learn wisdom. Employers don't like that. And you may end up losing your job, causing yourself harm, and all that kind of stuff. You've got to be the kind of person who takes responsibility, who is not letting the sloth come in and take over your life, even though everyone else might be doing it. It's the kind of thing that could cause a lot of harm to yourself and to others. So here are 2 questions for self-reflection, and the last one is a big one, all right? Here's the first one. When people are asking for help, do I try to keep a low profile to avoid being asked? In other words, you like to relax so much, you try to always avoid helping because I just want to relax. That's the first one, and here's the real kicker for you. Would I be embarrassed or fired if my employer knew how much work time I spend doing non-work things like scrolling social media, chatting with friends, or just wasting time? Whew. It's going to hit, right? So those are 6 ways to spot a sloth in your life from Proverbs. 6 ways that laziness will wreck your life, will cause problems, and you don't want that. None of us wants our lives to fall apart. So from those 6 things, do you see any sloths in your life? Well, if you did, then let's listen to the third and final part, which I'm just going to call How to Kick the Sloth Out of Your Life. Again, the Bible's answer for how we do these things is not just simply for me to end the sermon here and say, do better. That's not the gospel. That's not the way Jesus works with our hearts. So let me just do 2 very short ones and one a little bit longer one on how Christ enables us to do this. The first thing you got to do is identify where there is a sloth in your life. That's obvious. Is it an all-consuming thing in your life? Is it just one area, like you don't finish what you start? You got to be clear, this is an area that I need to work on. Identify it. Then secondly, repent of your slothfulness. If your heart is grieved over that, how you failed in certain tasks that God has called you to do, then listen, you're in the right place to experience change. Come before God. Say, God, I've not honored you in this way. I've been a fool. I've not lived well on this. I need your help to be able to change this area of my life. But again, the message of the gospel is not do better. It's not the message. So finally, here's the third and final thing we'll talk about. Let Christ's work for you kick the sloth out of your life. Here's what I mean by that. Remember that it's because of our sin that God cursed the ground. Work is good, but work has become toil. We sweat to eat now. Work and just living in this world can be so frustrating and so difficult. And of course, the other big part of the curse that came because of human sin is that we will work, it will be difficult, and then we will die. That is the curse that is upon this planet because of what human beings have done in turning away from our Creator. But the message of the Bible is that God did not want to leave it this way. That God had a plan to come and do something glorious for us that we did not deserve, we did not earn, but that comes all because of His one-way love, His grace for us. And God sent Jesus in this world to work, listen to this, to work on our behalf. That is why Christ came into the world. The Father said to the Son, I have a job for you to do. And the Son said, I will do it. I have come to do your will. What is the job? What was His job? There's many ways we could describe what Jesus' job was, what His work was, but I'll say it like this in the context of what we are saying today. Jesus was sent into this world, and His work was to reverse the curse. To reverse the curse that we brought upon ourselves, that we cannot escape on our own, that we cannot get out of. We cannot be immortal. We cannot make this world into a place that works easily and nicely, where just life works well and jobs are always satisfying and everything works well and all relationships work out. We all know we cannot do that. Despite our best efforts, we cannot change ourselves. Jesus came into the world to reverse the curse. And what we need to see then is how He does this. And when our hearts and when our minds are filled with who He is and what He's done, we suddenly find our hearts changing when it comes to this whole attitude of laziness and work. So let's just track this for a minute. Let Jesus fill your heart. What we need to see is that Jesus, first of all, He had every right to stay up in heaven and relax for all of eternity. He was not bound to have to come down here, and yet Philippians chapter 2 says He intentionally chose to give up His rights, let's just say to relax and receive all the worship of the angels and all those who've gone believers to with the Lord. He had every right to sit at God's right hand, to be the one who relaxes and takes it all in, but He chose not to. He took upon the job that the Father gave Him. He gave up those rights, and the Philippians 2 says He became a man and He took the form of a servant. Not a king who is served. He took the form of a servant. That is, He came to do jobs. He came to work. That's what a servant does. A servant does not, their time is not their own. They don't get to say what they get to do, especially in the ancient world. They do the tasks and the jobs they came to do. And Jesus gladly and willingly and voluntarily gave up his rights to relax, to become a servant in order to do the jobs that the Father had given him. And he always said, I have come to do the work of my Father. I have come to do the tasks and the work that have been given to me. And look at Christ as he pours out his life serving other people. That's what he's always doing. Look at Christ when he is so exhausted from the work that he has done that he literally falls asleep in the back of a boat during a storm. That's how tired he is. Look at Christ fulfilling his ultimate responsibility that he was called to, which was to give his life upon the cross. Behold his effort in carrying the crossbeam that he was to carry, and he falls under its crushing load. Behold him toiling up the hill of Golgotha. Behold him taking on the crushing work of what he was called to do upon the cross. And what was he called to do upon the cross? What work was that? It was to bear the curse that we deserve for our sins in his body. He had to take the curse that we deserve, and he took it upon himself in order that we might be set free from the curse, that we might be set free from the curse of our sin and the judgment that is against us, so that we might be set free from the curse of death that is upon us, and we would be given eternal life, that we might be set free from this glorious world that God has created, but that is under a curse, that creation itself would be one day liberated, and it would be a new heavens and a new earth, where work is no longer something that we sweat and toil for and get frustrated with, but a new heavens and a new earth that Revelation 22 verse 3 says is a place where there is no more curse. This is what Christ came to do. This is what Christ came to do on the cross, was to bear the curse in his body on the tree, in order that he might reverse the curse, that we might be set free from it. So we say, just praise the one who did not make any lame excuses, but took up the task that was appointed to him to do. Praise the one who did not quit what he started, but took up that task and completed his work all the way to the end and cried out in one of his last breaths, "It is finished. I'm done the job. All the way to the nth degree. I started it and I finished it." Praise the one who bore the curse of death so that we could be raised to new life. Praise the one who had a crown of thorns pressed into his skull so that we could be brought into a world where there is no more curse. That is why Christ came. He came to reverse the curse, to bring us into a world where there is no more curse, no more sin, and that's why we sing at Christmas, not now in August, but at Christmas, that great verse from Joy to the World. "No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground." There will be no more of this. He comes to make his blessings flow far as the curse is found. He comes to eradicate the curse all the way to its nth degree. The curse has permeated every part of creation, but he comes to reverse it all and to eradicate it, to bring us into that new creation. So, do you see then how Christ's work for us changes everything? It changes our slothful hearts, because what it does is it makes us go, wow, he did that work for me on my behalf when I didn't deserve it. And so Philippians 2 says, you ought to have that same mind of Christ in you. Look at other people and say, I have been served so much, I now want to serve other people. I want to put other people ahead of myself. So I'm not just going to always relax. And when I'm given a task by someone else, I want to finish it because it will bless them. It's going to serve them well. It's going to be loving towards them. And so I need to make sure that I am not slothful. I'm not lazy. I need to work on their behalf. That is why Paul writes those famous words when he says, whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord, not for men. Remember, this is wisdom, to honor God in the world that God has given us. Knowing, he says, that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So friends, when the gospel works itself deep into our hearts and we see that Christ worked on our behalf, It changes us into people who want to serve others, to be their servants, to work well for them, to honor God and to honor other people. That's what it means to live a wise life, a life that will not be destroyed, a life where we don't wreck ourselves. And should we fulfill this vision even in part, don't you think Christians then would be the best employers in society? Christians should be the best employees in society. Christians should be the best volunteers, those who are always looking to help other people, to say, how can I serve you? And we are known then for our love for other people, not for how we just seek our own comfort. Jesus did not say, take up your couch and follow me. He said, take up your cross. And it's not always easy. It's death to self. It's death to the sloth. The sloth has to be killed within us. And when we kill the sloth and then we have that heart, we say, Jesus, I want to serve you and I want to serve other people well. Enable me to do that. I should end there. May God enable us to do this. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you that you've given us the book of Proverbs, that we might understand what it means to live wisely, not foolishly. And Lord, we confess in many ways we are all fools. We are all so easily deceived by our own sin. We are all so self-centered. Jesus, forgive us for that and continue to reshape us. Enable us to have the mind of Christ. Enable us to have your heart, the heart that is always seeking others above ourselves, always seeking to honor the Father, to live for Him. So, Father, enable each of us to live the life you've called us to live, to be wise in the way that we live in this world. Thank you for your word. Empower us to live it. Thank you for your grace that you give us in Christ. And it's in His name that we pray. Amen.